What if I told you that the real key to learning, to really getting smarter, isn't about feeling good and comfortable? What if it's actually about embracing confusion? Well, today we're going to dive into a pretty powerful framework called the Resonance Dissonance Oscillator. And yeah, it might just completely change how you think about learning.
So let's just kick things off with this huge idea right here. Comfort is the enemy of neuroplasticity. Now, neuroplasticity, it's just a fancy way of saying your brain can literally rewire itself. It's how we learn, well, anything. So what this quote is screaming at us is that real growth, it doesn't happen when we're just cruising along. Nope, it happens when we're challenged.
Which, of course, begs the question, right? If comfort is the bad guy in the story of learning, who's the hero? What's the secret ingredient that actually helps our brains get stronger and adapt?
Okay, to find that friend, we first have to totally reframe how we look at the whole learning process. We need to get our heads around this kind of counterintuitive idea that feeling stuck, that friction, it's not a sign you're failing. It's actually a sign your brain is warming up to level up.
I mean, think about it. Most of us grew up believing that if you're good at something, it should just click. It should feel smooth, easy. And the second we hit a wall and get confused, we think, I'm just not getting it. This is on me.
But here's the thing, the neuroscience tells a totally different story. Our brains are basically prediction machines. All day long, they're building models of how the world works. You expect that when you turn a doorknob, the door will swing open. But what if one day you turn it and the door slides up? That's what scientists call a prediction error. You can just call it surprise. And it's that exact moment of surprise that kickstarts your brain into saying, whoa, wait a minute, time to update the files. That's when new connections get built.
So if surprise is the trigger, the secret sauce for learning, how do we actually use it? How can we do it on purpose? Well, that brings us to this really cool framework that does exactly that, the Resonance Dissonance Oscillator.
So, the Resonance Dissonance Oscillator, let's just call it the RDO, is basically a system designed to create the perfect rhythm for learning. And the key word here is oscillator. It's all about intentionally moving back and forth, cycling between what feels familiar and safe and what completely surprises you.
It breaks down into two core states. On one side, you've got resonance. This is that cozy, safe feeling of validation. It's the, I get this moment. That's your brain getting a little reward, a little hit of dopamine. But on the other side, you've got dissonance. This is the surprise, the contradiction. It's that jolt of adrenaline that makes you lean in and go, wait, what? That's the prediction error that grabs your brain by the collar and says, pay attention.
And here's the absolute secret to the whole thing. Neither of these states is good or bad. The real magic is in the movement between them. If you have too much resonance, you get bored. But if you have too much dissonance, you get totally overwhelmed and shut down. The RDO is all about finding that perfect dance, that rhythm for real learning.
All right, so this all sounds great in theory, but how do we actually put this powerful idea into practice? Let's break down the super simple three-phase process that makes this whole thing work.
It really just comes down to this simple, repeatable loop. First, you anchor. Then, you shock. And finally, you synthesize. That's it. Anchor, shock, synthesize. Let's dig into each one. Okay, phase A is the anchor. This is all about creating that feeling of resonance. You start with something the person already knows, something they already agree with. You're validating their current knowledge. This creates a foundation of psychological safety, gets that dopamine flowing, and makes their brain open and receptive for what's about to happen next. And then comes phase B, the shock. Right after you've built up that safe foundation, you introduce the black swan, some surprising fact, a piece of data that totally contradicts the anchor. This is the moment of dissonance. You are intentionally breaking their current mental model to create that essential prediction error. And finally, we land at phase C, synthesis. This is where the real aha moment happens. The brain now has two conflicting ideas, the safe anchor and the surprising shock. Synthesis is the process of building a new, bigger, more complex mental model that can actually make sense of both. It resolves the tension, and that's when real, lasting learning clicks into place. So, when you put all these pieces together, what makes this framework so incredibly powerful? Why is this such a winning strategy for anyone who wants to learn faster or maybe even teach a little better? Well, for starters, the RDO isn't just some abstract theory. It's a tool that works with your brain's natural chemistry, not against it.
It basically gamifies learning. You start chasing those dopamine hits of understanding, and you get a jolt of energy from the adrenaline of surprise. It makes the whole process of getting smarter feel way more engaging.
And this right here, this is probably the single most important takeaway of the whole thing. This framework completely flips the script on what it means to be confused. The source material says it perfectly. It turns confusion into a necessary step of the protocol rather than a failure state. Let that sink in. Confusion is no longer a sign that you failed. It's a sign that you're doing it right.
So look, if you remember just one thing from all of this, let it be this. The path to getting really, truly smart isn't about trying to avoid confusion. It's not about finding some perfectly smooth, easy road to knowledge. The real goal is to turn that confusion into fuel. It's about building a system, a process that intentionally creates those little moments of surprise, because you know with total confidence that on the other side of that controlled shock is a brand new level of understanding. The goal isn't to run from it, it's to automate it.
And that really just leaves us with one final challenge for you. Now that you know that the trigger for real learning is that jolt of surprise, the question you should be asking yourself isn't, how do I avoid being wrong? The real question is, where are you going to go to intentionally find that productive shock, that dissonance, that's going to lead you to your next big aha moment?